Good evening, and welcome to Zero Hour, the survival horror card game for 2 to 6 players, where children face unspeakable terrors using dice and cards. Tonight we'll be looking at the gameplay for the Deluxe Edition, and going over the basics of how the game is run. There are a number of main cards that you'll use throughout the gameplay experience, the first of which is the player card. Each player controls a group of children. Each hand is made up of 5 cards. 4 of these cards are player children cards. All the basic information is listed on the card, including the name, nickname, age, escape value, and sanity value. In addition to the information that's actually written out, there are a number of icons. The first icon shows the sanity value of the child. The next shows the point value of the child. And finally, the escape value of the child. In addition to the regular children, each player will control one gifted child that acts as the weapon or buff in the group. Each of these gifted children not only controls the standard information that would be listed on the regular child card, but they also have a special unique ability listed out on the card. This unique ability is paramount for keeping your other children alive and for using that ability against other players, other opponents within the playfield. The next card is the sanity level card. This card is positioned beneath each player card and moves up and down based on the encounter or situation the player is experiencing. As the player experiences peril throughout the game, that number will go up and down. Time is controlled through 0 hour cards. Each of the cards are marked from midnight until 6 a.m. So the player actually has to survive 7 turns in order to make it to sunrise. The deluxe game features an additional 3 cards that give you 9 p.m., 10 p.m., and 11 p.m. if you would extend out your game to a full 10 turns. The game starts at midnight, and then each round a new card is turned over until you reach the final round, which would be 6 a.m. The deluxe game features exploration cards. Each of these exploration decks is titled and centered around a particular character, this case being the pale one. Each of the cards that correspond with the pale one deck are written specifically to go around this particular adventure. Include locations, artifacts, items, allies, bits of background story, clues, and this example shows one of the cards of the pale one himself. The icons listed on the card help speed up the process and create a better understanding for the player. Each of the cards has a small red splotch with a number in the center. If you are drawing an exploration card, and any of your exploration cards has this splotch with a number, that means that you are taking an immediate sanity damage. In addition to that, there are icons which determine whether or not you are going to be rolling any extra dice. The 2 dice being the creature damage dice and the outcome die. The black icon shown on the pale one card here shows a slash, which means that you are rolling the creature damage die and you are not adding any modifiers to it. In addition, at the bottom of the card, it lists the message as well to correspond with that as something that follows your story, which says roll for sanity damage. So with each exploration card, you're going to be given the information of the card, the story elements of the card, and then the icons to correspond with those story elements in a way that's going to make it go smoother and cleaner in terms of the process. So, in other cards, you're going to have a white die, a stamp icon indicating that it's a point value card or item or ally card, and then you're going to have different symbols that correspond with that. I'll go over those more in detail as we go through the game and experience a number of turns. There are 3 dice in 0 hour, the first of which is the event die. The event die is used for the standard game, and therefore not used in the deluxe game. This die is used in place of the exploration deck and determines what happens to the player and what experience they encounter, whether or not they see something, hear something, experience ambient activity, or direct encounter with the creature itself. There's also a benefit to rolling the die that may give the player back sanity. The next die is the creature damage die. The creature damage die is rolled when the player has an experience with a minion or creature. rolling this die that determines whether or not the creature faces between 1 and 5 points of damage. If the player has received a skull and they miss their escape roll, that child is taken automatically by the creature and is lost. If a child is lost, there is always a chance to rescue that child. Finally, the numbered white die is the outcome die. This die is used to perform multiple tests, including the escape roll, that determines whether or not a child can break free physically or mentally from a creature's grasp. This die is also used to perform tests that involve physical and structural hazards. The game begins with one person taking the role as dealer and passing out all the player cards. Once each player has their group of 5 children, including one gifted, in front of them, each player gets a sanity card to position underneath each child. Once that setup phase is complete, the game begins. The game begins with the midnight card being turned over and positioned in the center of the table. Each person has their own deck in front of them, as well as sanity cards. The dice are positioned in the center, and the center portion is left open for any lost children. The exploration deck is placed in the center, and there will be a discard pile alongside it. Players roll off to determine which group is going to be first. Once that person's been designated, play proceeds, with the player picking up the first exploration card. The player then draws a card for each particular child, reading their experience aloud. The first card shown here is Whispering Names, which concludes that the player has experienced something deep within the forest, echoing strange sounds all around them. They recognize them as the whispering sounds of many voices. Because of this experience, that individual child has lost 1 sanity damage. In this instance, Elizabeth Frau, nicknamed Doll, is drawing a card from the pile and draws the Sanctuary card. The card reads as follows. Before you lay a vast grove with bird feeders erected on either end. You listen intently, but your ears detect no birds, and a quick scan of the sky yields only movements of the trees. The woods are never this quiet. This card, along with many others, detail out ambient situations that the player will counter that are not threatening, but give flavor and text to the actual adventure that are specific to the encounter itself. This card in particular being specific to the Pale One experience. Play then continues with the next child drawing a card. This child in particular is Arthur Schultz, the one they call Ace. Arthur has drawn the Raging Rivers card. Now in doing so, he has not only been damaged once on his own sanity level, but based on the conditions of trying to cross this Raging River, he is also going to have to roll again to see if he incurs additional damage. He then has to use his outcome die and get a 4 or better, which he has rolled and he fails, so he then loses 1 additional. Next up is Milton O'Malley. He has drawn a Tendril Mass card. The Tendril Mass card is one of the minions that accompany the Pale One. So as you can see on the card, it lists out an automatic sanity damage for him experiencing and witnessing this Tendril Mass, and then a black die icon with a -1, meaning that he is rolling the creature die, and you would subtract 1 from the total damage output. The next up is Charlie Marks, aka Hooligan. He draws the next card out of the exploration deck, and as you can see in comparison, he has drawn a rather positive card, which is Watering Hole, and this basically determines that he will gain his sanity for finding this secret spot in the woods that allows him to regain some sanity. The next group then begins play, and the gifted child leading this is the Clairvoyant. She has drawn a card called Terrifying Form, which incurs 2 points of sanity damage. Now, after reading the card out loud, describing her experience with this horrible specter, she then moves her sanity card down and then pulls or drops 2 sanity points down. The next up is the next child, which is Lloyd Rafferty. His nickname is Goof. And as you can see, he has drawn the Hazard card, which is Rotting Structure. Now, Rotting Structure actually has 2 points on it, the first of which being an immediate sanity damage from being within the structural hazard and moving through it, and the second shows an icon with a T in the center, meaning that he has to make a test. Now, this test is for falling debris. He's already walked into a hazardous area, which has spooked him. But because of his disturbance, he is then now going to roll to see if he disturbs the area further and then incurs any additional damage, which he rolls his outcome, which is a 5+, and fails. So he then takes on an additional point of damage. The next child is Sue Roberts, who finds a beneficial card, which is a lantern. The lantern is beneficial in the sense that if she is going to be up against any creatures or minions, she is able to reroll any of her creature damage, meaning that if she was to roll high, let's say 4, 5, or 6, she could then reroll that die. With each lantern's use, though, she does have to roll a outcome die to determine whether or not that lantern goes out, whether or not it catches fire and damages her, or whether or not she's able to hold on to that for the next use. The next child takes his turn, and this particular child is Sheldon Marks, whose nickname is Dope. He has drawn the rather terrifying card, which is Barn. This particular Barn card is one of 3 story arc cards that are tied in specifically to the Pale One, and this describes a rather gruesome experience of the children walking into this barn and finding blood and harnesses strung up all over the barn with human hair and teeth littering the ground. So with finding the experience, it's listed as a G1 or G2. This in particular is a G2, meaning that all children within the group take 2 points of damage from this experience. The next child taking a turn is Helen Tennyson, who is nicknamed Honey. She has drawn the Pale One card, meaning that she has had an experience with the creature itself. That experience frightens her, and she has to roll creature damage for that. She rolls creature damage and then rolls to try to break free of that, but fails. Helen has lost a number of health, so you can see she's dropped down. Helen has lost a number of sanity, so as you can see, she's dropped down to almost nothing. The third group then begins, the final in this particular turn, and the first group, this particular group being led by a gifted who is a seer. His particular ability is to rescue children at getting a +2 in that rescue die roll. He draws the first card from the exploration, which is not a handrail. Basically, it describes that he's groped around in the dark and wrapped his hands around barbed wire fence, trying to make his way through. As you can see, this occurs 2 sanity damage, and play then proceeds to the next child. The next child then is Jacob Kozak, whose nickname is Knucklehead. He draws the minion card, Animated Limbs, meaning that a number of limbs have come to life and started moving towards him. He is then going to roll the creature die to determine whether or not that's going to be severe damage, and then he's going to roll his outcome die, which is his ability to escape from that. So his goal is obviously to roll as low as possible. On the creature end, which he rolls a 4, which is not very low, and then he must try to escape. And the thing about this, it's a quite devastating roll because he added 1. The next child in play has drawn the River Below card, which is an ambient card that basically gives you a vista point of the child not encountering anything dangerous and having relative safety. They are not benefiting from this particular experience, but it's only there to shape the storytelling elements. Matilda Mathers has drawn the Needed Rest card, so she's benefited from finding a spot of safety and has given herself an additional sanity point. The final child in the group has drawn a Pale One card, and that's Paul Miller, the miscreant. He's drawn a Pale One card that has an additional +1 modifier, meaning he is adding 1 to whatever he rolls. In that circumstance, he has rolled, and luckily has rolled a 5, even with the damage he has gotten. An entire round has taken place, and the next card is flipped over, which is the 1 o'clock card. Play then proceeds to the initial starting group, which is led by the Witch. That particular experience is the Witch has drawn an abandoned card. And this card is basically a flavor card telling her that she has found an abandoned house lying before her in ruin. She moves cautiously past the wreckage and takes notice of the mailbox still intact at the end of the driveway. So that adds some ambient flavor and texture